welcome to a War Game review from theplayersaid.com. I'm Grant.
And I'm Alexander.
Today we played a second edition copy of Hearts and Minds, Vietnam 1965 to 1975 from Worthington Games. This game was designed by John Ponisk, and I believe recently was announced as an upcoming third edition from Compass Games. So we've played this now. I got to quickly probably try to get rid of this so that I can buy the new edition.
Don't tell Paisley.
Yeah, right. Which I'm sure addresses some of the concerns that we have and we'll share as we go through the video. But this is a card-driven game, focuses on the Vietnam War, starts in 1965 and goes through well after the Americans left in 1975. We today played a shortened campaign version from 72 to 75. We only played 4 years. And I think I wanted to point out that the Americans had in essence left.
Yeah, this was like just the Arvin hanging on for dear life against the communists.
Some of the ROK units from Korea. I think there were some other international NATO force units, but not many. I think there was one. So basically it was the Arvin trying in essence to force a peace talk so that they could end with their country still in their hands.
Yeah.
And fought off the NVA and the VC.
Just not getting overwhelmed like they did historically.
So a very interesting game. We love CDGs. CDGs are card-driven games where, in this CDG, there are op points. I think they're called RPs. Resource points. You can play it for the resource points. Sometimes you can pay those same resource points that come from cards on the event that is printed on the card. Sometimes you have to play the entire event that's written on the card to get the effect, I think.
Yeah, but
don't do anything else.
Normally you're either like, I'm doing ops or event.
Yeah. This it kind of mixed.
This one you can do the event, but you have to pay some of your ops.
Right.
Which I thought was neat.
Yeah. One of the cards I had was called Tunnel Rats. I never used it, but it was a 3 RP card that allowed me to turn over VC units.
Yeah, that's nice.
So I could kind of turn them over to decide if I want to run in there or get the bad intel, avoid the bad intel, which becomes a random die roll. But yeah, we love CDGs. We think they're very tug-of-war-ish, back and forth. You have to really be consistent on what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
The thing with CDGs is you can't I'm going to dabble in this, and then I'm going to switch my focus and I'm going to go here. You really have to pick a couple of strategies and focus on them. Don't you feel like?
Yeah, because you have these really limited resources, and if you can spread yourself too thinly very quickly.
And you're not getting really any benefit out of doing a little bit here and a little bit there.
And then this one, your hand is 5 cards. It is a very small hand.
Right.
You'll play 4 of those cards, and you can keep one over. But so the turns are fairly quick.
Yeah.
8 cards between the two of you. So really, those 4 cards, you've got to make the most of it. You can't do as much as you can in other games. Mm-hmm. And so there would be times where I'm like, okay, I need to do this, that, and this, and this. And then you're like, you do one, an attack doesn't go your way, and suddenly you're 3 cards in, and you're like, what am I even doing?
I didn't accomplish anything this round.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. The NVA are more powerful. You had way more units than I did. Although they start out as what are they called? Untrained.
I think I've got volume of units.
Right. Not necessarily power, but volume. Yeah. And the cool thing that I had was airstrikes still. I had bombing. So I could literally pick a couple of provinces and try to wipe out units. I rolled really poorly most of the time. But it's kind of balanced that way. The Arvin don't get a lot of reinforcements. The NVA do. The NVA also have the VC units, which can do a lot of damage with their ambushes and their hiding and their intel.
Yeah.
As well as, you did a really good job of forcing me to focus on you creating control areas. I had to then go in there, and it usually took 2 steps or 2 RPs to remove that.
And remove it, because I'd always just evade and run away. And that's neat. You've got a really neat little cat and mouse element with the VC units going in and kind of doing that kind of stuff. They're limited, and that's kind of what they're designed for. But it was a really nice way to incorporate guerrilla warfare into a game that has a 12-page rulebook.
Right.
So I thought that was really cool, a little bit different, and that bit was well done. I thought that was fun. Something that I really liked about this game was the combat results table.
Yeah, it was interesting.
It's very small, and it's you add up your combat factors and you roll a d6, and that's your combat total. Effectively, that's how it goes. Combat's very simple in that way, but the red player, the NVA player, has a worse CRT. The allies were better equipped and
had better
weaponry, all that kind of stuff. And so there's a difference in the combat results tables. It's not huge, but it is there, and it is significant.
For example, to inflict 2 losses, the Arvin had to have a range of 11 to 13. For that same 2 losses, the NVA had to have 12 to 14. So kind of 1 point difference, and that would then stretch out to almost 2 points the later you got into that table.
And so what you find is, if I roll a 10 and he rolls an 11, there's a huge difference in what that looks like.
I would more often than not inflict 2 losses to your 1.
And I'm like, I rolled really well, and you're still only doing 1.
Yeah.
And so that was really cool. That kind of balances out me having a metric crap load of guys coming down.
Numerical superiority.
Yeah, pouring down from North Vietnam, but they're not as good.
Right.
I thought that was really fun. Just to, the die roll is always like, okay.
Right. The other thing, and we didn't really experience a whole lot with the Pathet Lao and the Khmer Rouge, right?
I'm not going to pretend to have
I know it's historical.
Properly.
Yeah, Khmer Rouge, but those are kind of I guess for lack of a better word, the Montagnard native people that the Americans trained and the NVA trained. We didn't really deal a lot with those in Laos and Cambodia. Going back now, the next game, I bet we do. We might focus on those.
Especially early game.
A little more, yeah.
If you can collapse those countries early game, and if, that way the NVA and the communists can take over Laos and Cambodia, that gives them a really easy time moving down the Ho Chi Minh Trail, doing whatever they want, pouring down into into the kind of the southern, in Zone 4 and southern provinces. It just gives you a little bit of extra freedom, because there's these, otherwise there's this stack of 6 or 8, I guess 5 or 6 kind of combat power that, can jump in and cut your supply lines, and
it's hard to
mess
defeat.
around the Ho Chi Minh Trail, and you've got to commit 2 or 3 cards out of your hand of 4 cards
to do battles
to get those guys out, which is a significant commitment. So there's a couple of little sub games with that, and the little VC guerrillas that make what is quite a simple game have a lot of depth to it. And I thought that was really cool.
One of the things I did like a lot about the VC, how many VC units are there? There are about 20, give or take, maybe 15. About half of those they're not a unit per se, they are called bad intel.
And I think it's less than half.
Less than half.
They just came
We just seem to draw them often.
Yeah.
But it was kind of cool, so when I moved into those areas and attacked them, Alexander would get to roll on a table. He would roll 2 dice and then determine some type of what's called a bush event that would either affect both of us. Some of them affected both. Some affected me negatively. And there were a couple that were positive for me. Yeah. Allowed me to make the Arvin stability better. We helped a village.
Yeah, there was one. There was one. I remember it was like a really heavy monsoon storm.
Yeah.
So everyone had to retreat. So I didn't die in combat, which was nice. But then the U.S. helped the villages escape. So the stability goes up.
Yeah.
And,
so that was really neat. I liked that. The VC obviously were not the formidable fighting force that the NVA were, but I thought their role was played very well. The only comment I have is it literally looks like a tortilla chip. I mean, it's just, I don't know. I thought those counters could have been done better.
All the counters are helmets, and Inez is the little straw hat, which...
Yeah, it's the straw hat, but it looks like a tortilla chip is what it looks like. Yeah. So those were just, but I thought the VC were cool. I liked the Montagnard element, the Arvin and the U.S. Lots of very neat elements in this game. We enjoy CDGs, and I think we enjoyed this one. What was something you didn't like or would like to see done differently in the game?
And again, most of this is probably addressed in the 3rd edition that's going to come
Or
out
will
from
be
Compass
addressed, yeah.
Games. Because those Compass put out a great product. This is just, so I don't know when this game came out, but
2010, I want to say. But
I feel like it shows in some of the components.
yeah.
Some of the counters aren't centered well. The cards are kind of an awkward shape if you wanted to sleeve them. They're very thin. And
They're kind of flimsy.
And this is picky. They're not rounded on the corners.
Yeah.
And so you got this spiky cards.
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
This is, So just components-wise, I would love this game to have kind of a makeover because it's a cool game. It was fun, and I'm like, it deserves kind of like taking it to the next level, I feel.
The other thing, the map, I think is functional. It's not very attractive. There's no real areas you can't tell what's jungle versus mountains easily. Well, the mountains are clear there.
They got the but when you got to move. You got to move your units because you have a bunch
to
of
see
stacks
what's
on
there.
To see what's there.
Yeah,
that can be frustrating. At times.
These control markers are also like gargantuan control markers. I literally, that's a 1-inch counter almost, whereas everything else is a half-inch counter or smaller. And it's like that should have been flipped. I'd have rather seen the units bigger and the control markers, or make these spaces bigger. Make the map a little wider.
Because some of the spaces are too small, and you get big clusters down in the kind of the central part of the board where
and how many
a bit unwieldy.
How many times was I reading a card? Oh, I'm looking for Khantoum, and I know it's generally up here, and I'm like, where is that? So I had to move things around because everything was covered up. Just a small nitpicky thing, but something that I think could have been done much better, much more efficiently. But overall, I think we enjoyed this game quite a bit. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at the map, talk a little bit about some of the battle mechanics and other things, and then we'll come back for some final thoughts.
So here's a look at the map. You see it's actually a long, thin, kind of not your average map. It's quite small as well. Board's divided up into areas. You got Cambodia, Laos, North Vietnam, just a tiny little bit up here, and then you've got South Vietnam over here. There's a few tracks, so you've got just a general game track. You've got a lot of different bits and pieces on here, and here's where you store kind of these are the units that died this turn. This is the dead pool, and the VC pool is where you keep all the VC chits, but I keep them off board just because there's too many to reasonably fit there. And you got your year track down here. This is how the game ended that we played, which ended horribly. It was crushing defeat for the Vietnamese, for the North Vietnamese. They did not make very good progress, which seems to be a theme in the Vietnam games that I play. Doesn't matter which side I play, I always get horribly crushed when I play Vietnam. But I cannot help myself because these games are just fascinating. So, like we talked about, the object of the game is to kind of get this marker here, which is the dove hawk marker. Basically, the dove represents kind of getting closer to actually suing for peace, and the hawk is, being aggressive, going out there fighting the Vietnamese, fighting communism, and so that kind of ebbs and flows over the course of the game. The Vietnamese are trying to get that as high as possible, so that the U.S. will sue for peace and they can win on their terms. The Americans are trying to keep that really low for a sustained period of time, so that everyone agrees that this is, bad. We should be attacking and keeping things kind of on the offensive, so to speak. So that's kind of how victory is determined, and it changes. And where's the playbook? So it staggers throughout the game. Let's see. If you look here, you kind of check victory at the end of each year, and the stipulations change for automatic victory. And at the end of the game, the Vietnamese need to have 44 on the dove track to have won, which basically means they've flooded the whole map and driven everyone out of Saigon as the last helicopter takes off from the embassy, is effectively what needs to happen. Clearly that didn't happen, but that's the goal of the game, at least for the NVA. ARVN forces are pretty much all that's left on the board. I think there's one Republic of Korea forces on here. I think that's it. There might be a NATO force, maybe. I'm not sure. But all the Americans have already left. Those are blue counters. They kind of leave halfway through the game, and you gradually take them off as you reduce US presence, and you leave just these ARVN forces, which hopefully you've trained to do well. So there's some great historic flow. Let's take a quick look at the cards, and from a component standpoint, there's a reason they're putting out a third edition, and I think it's just to kind of revamp the rules book, revamp the counters. You can kind of see here, this counter is kind of horribly centered and it cuts off the top of it. And the cards are pretty flimsy. They're kind of an awkward, kind of thin, small shape, and they've got these pointed corners which are kind of barbaric. But I'm presuming they're going to fix those. But the cards themselves, they all have a great historic picture on them. Always a big fan of that. It's kind of your traditional CDG style to an extent. You play a card, you get some RPs, you can play the event. This is a response card, so you play it as a response to an action or some other card that gets played. Normally you'll have something here. This gives me 3 VPs. I can trigger the event if I want to, at the cost of one of those RPs. And then I've got 2 to spend on the board doing actions. But that's really how it is. You have a hand of 5 cards, go back and forth, and you spend 4. That's a whole year, and you can hold the card over or use it kind of during the in-between turns phase. But the turns are short in the sense that there's only 4 cards a piece, so it goes quickly. Some CDGs you get to like 7, 8 card hands, and it takes twice as long. So that's nice. The game plays fairly quickly. We played for a long time because the campaign is big, but I felt like it went along at a good clip. So, units-wise, the game is fairly simple. There's not a lot of variation in the units. What's interesting, what's nice is you have, this is a kind of a basic, you see it's untrained, they got 1 firepower, 6 movement factor. Flip it over, hey look, we got 2 veterans now. 2 is the only thing that changes, that's really it. And these are ARVN units. And there's certain stipulations about where those guys are placed and how that all works. But you just move guys around. It costs a movement point to activate your movement factor. These guys could move 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, move through provinces. If I want to do a combat, I spend an RP to do a combat. When we're in the same kind of area, you just kind of add up your modifiers. And your modifiers might look like this. So here's what a stack might look like. There's a stacking limit of basically 4 infantry units, and then kind of any other, one of basically every other asset. So you've got 4 untrained NVA infantry units, and they've got some artillery as their mortars, which had a +2. And ARVN units have 2 vets and an untrained unit here. So you just total up your attack score. So we've got 5 here, and then we've got 4, 5, 6, and then you simply roll a d6. And let's see, the ARVN roll a 6, fantastic, and the NBA roll a 4. So kind of consult back here, 6 and 4, you got 10 over here, then we had a 6 and 5s and 11 over here. And so then you consult the chart, and on the battle table, oh, here it is. So the red player rolled, I think they had a 10. So on the 7 to 10, they inflict 1 hit. And the blue player rolled an 11, so they inflict 2 hits. And you'll see here, these are not equal tables. The ARVN, the blue player, all the kind of Free People's Forces, they have much better weapons, better training, you would say. So their attacks are typically better. So you assign hits, and a hit is, there's no steps in this one, you just eliminate units, you get to choose which. So we eliminate a green unit, and they're going to choose to lose probably their weak guy. Goes into the body count, and the MVA going to lose 2 dudes. You can just put those also, if I can pick them up, into the body count. That's combat. You spend 1 RP to do 1 round of combat like that. Before you kind of resolve the combat, there is an option for the defender to potentially evade and basically retreat before combat. that's difficult the more troops that you have. And for individual kind of guerrillas like these VC units, it's actually much easier to do. If you've just got this guy, he can roll a dice and kind of bugger off and get out of combat before it even happens, which is nice, because these guys don't move a lot, and they're typically very weak. And you'll see these are hidden counters, and you just, if they ever do engage in combat, you flip them, and there's a couple things that might happen. So you've got, we actually picked up everything. So these are kind of the normal, they're 1 power, 1 VC, very slow, not very good in combat. There's a couple of trained guys, these are the better ones. They can do kind of special ambushes as well, which are powerful. Or you get these bad intel markers. If you ever flip a bad intel marker at the beginning of a combat, what happens is that you consult this special events chart, which is really fun. I actually had a blast trying to get this to go off. And basically you roll a dice, and you roll a 2, that's a terrible example. Let's roll a 6, fantastic. So if you roll a 6 in the die 1 column, we'll consult the 6. You roll a second die, you roll a 4, so we go to 6, 4. Bob Hope, John Wayne, Anne Margaret, and other celebrities entertain the troops. Promote all U.S. units in this province to veteran status. If there are no U.S. units present, promote 1 allied unit of any nationality. So that was a very good event for the U.S. Most of these are not. I will be honest with you. Most of them are booby traps or various quagmires, things that go poorly, and it's the VC kind of, it's their guerrilla tactics, messing up everything. Just a really cool little table, very different, nice little variation that you have. I think one of those, we rolled My Lai, and it destabilized the government, and it reduced resources, which was fascinating, because it was, this American, very heavy-handed incident that went on and displeased a lot of people. So, again, very interesting stuff going on in this game. But really it boils down to the NVA trying to move down the country and put out these political control markers. They're trying to kill as many allied units as possible whilst trying to keep their losses down. And then they're trying to destabilize the government, which is this Arvan stability. You do that by volume, like by attrition, and also removing these kind of pacification markers. And so there's this kind of political struggle that goes on underneath this combat and military struggle that goes on. So yeah, you get a little bit of a feel of kind of your coin style games. This has a similar type of feel to it, but it's it's not quite as complex as all that. And the units don't have maybe as bit of not quite as much variation, so to speak. But that's really the game. The US, the Allied player, they're trying to stamp out all this communist political control, trying to just cause huge losses to the NVA, and then make sure they've got enough resources to help pay the Vietnamese government, South Vietnamese government, so that they don't kind of fall to a coup. And obviously you got Ho Chi Minh Trail that can be moved through. There's a little mini game with Cambodia and Laos where if you can kill, there's the 2 sub-factions in either country, and if either one of these wins, they take full control of the country, which can really free up movement down here, or it can really stymie the movement through here as well. But that's a lot of the game. It's not a deeply complex game. I think the rules you've got here are 12 pages. It's really 10 pages at best. You've got play aid charts, and then you've got the playbook. But that's everything kind of with the game, so to speak. So let's wrap up with some final thoughts.
So that was a look at the map. Alexander, what's your final thoughts on this game?
I had fun playing this. It was we enjoy playing Vietnam games.
We do. We do. We try to get every Vietnam game that comes out and enjoy it.
I'm English, so I've no idea why I like Vietnam games so much.
You had no role in it.
I'm fascinated by it.
Yeah.
It's a conflict that is just so interesting. There's so much going on. And this game for the 12-page rulebook, has quite a lot in it, and I think that's credit to the design. There's only so much you can put in a game, and this one keeps the gameplay going. I feel like we get bogged down in a lot, but there's still a lot of strategy to be had in this, and I think that's really, really good. And I think that's part of the reason I really liked it, is there was still a lot to think about.
Right.
Like, I could go for a couple of easy things, but overall I need to be doing much more down here.
Right.
There's decisions to be made, and it's it got a lot of meat to it as well.
I really liked the battle table. I thought the ambush and the evasion elements were very interesting. Also really liked the bombers and the air superiority. And overall, I enjoyed the cards and what they were trying to force us to do.
Yeah.
Some of the event cards I thought were really fantastic. And then some of them, it's like, you really had to make a decision, is that worth it? Is that worth to spend my precious RPs, or is it just better for me to go ahead and do a couple of other things? And I like that. To me, when events are really, really good, it makes it a no-brainer. I'm going to take that event. Because it's going to... I'll be honest, I used an event up here, so I believe it was to pacify an area, and then I could relocate troops up there. That was powerful, because it helped me move, I think, 3 or 4 spaces, and really put a damper on what you were trying to do. That was a powerful event. And I had to sit there and think about it. Am I going to take this, or is it more wise to do something else? I also thought the victory conditions were interesting with this dove and hawk track. Yeah. I would really like to see them do that differently as far as how you track that. But a very interesting concept. There were only a few opportunities for me to reduce the amount of doves. There were a couple for you, I think, to increase the amount of doves.
Yeah, that was a very interesting part of the game.
Yeah.
Of how they want you to win. Getting an automatic victory in this game, good luck.
Yeah.
Very, very difficult. You're going to play it to the end, and the Vietnamese, the NVA, have to get so many points. Like, the onus is on them to have 44 points at the end of the game.
And that's hard.
And it is. It's difficult
to do.
Very hard. It's possible, but the pressure's on them to kind of attack, and do it.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. But yeah, I think, and this is, again, probably going to be changed in the 3rd edition. Some of the ways that you manage that, there's just like a bunch of numerical counters, and there's like 1 hawk token, and you somehow have to get 19 on it. There's just a little bit of bookkeeping, which is kind of arbitrary.
Yeah.
So you might just have a piece
of paper
on a paper would be a bit easier. Yeah. But I hope they fix that in the next one, where it's just here's some extra counters. This is, just track it here.
Right.
Make it a bit easier.
But I think overall, if you enjoy CDGs, this is a war game. There's combat. It relies on the events, and then there's other activities that you're trying to do: pacification, political control. So it's a little bit of everything. It has everything that you would expect from a Vietnam era war game. I think we really liked this. I would like to play this again. I would also like to get the 3rd edition, because I think they'll fix some of the elements that we didn't necessarily like.
Maybe polish the rulebook up.
Right.
Give me a glossary.
Yeah.
I know it's only 12 pages.
Yeah.
But there was some times I'm like, oh, where was that rule?
Well, you kept asking, where's the rule about whether or not it costs an RP to attack a bad intel VC marker?
Yeah, like if you do an attack and
there's nothing there,
they evade or they get out. I swear I read a rule about that.
Yeah.
And
we looked over and over
to like remind myself.
So an index where you could go back to that would be a great help. So, but overall, I would give this 2 thumbs up. I would say give it a try. It definitely is interesting, entertaining, and I think fairly engaging. It had us really biting our nails and trying to fight each other.
And I think the one other thing that was confusing at first was the playbook, just because it's a lot of stuff there. But when you get down to it, it tells you how flexible this game is.
Right.
You can play basically any length campaign that you want.
Yeah.
And it has the conditions for victory for that, and it has the setup for that. And I thought that is really awesome.
Yeah. It just needs to be clarified. Because there were a couple points in there we read in the setup, and we're like, we don't get that.
Yeah.
and it had to do really with what cards were included in the deck and the campaign cards.
Yeah.
I wish that would have been clearer, because I'm telling you, those campaign cards are pretty interesting.
Yeah, and just, but the flexibility of this game, I think, is a credit to the game.
Yeah.
Man, you can play as long as you want. You can play 10 years. You can play
5 years.
You
Yeah.
can do anything, and I think that's really nice when a game is that flexible.
Yeah.
You can really tailor it to what you want to do.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good thing.
So nice job, John Ponesk. We think this is a good game. So that's our thoughts on Hearts and Minds, Vietnam 1965 to 1975, second edition from Worthington Games. Thanks for watching, and we'll catch you next time we do a good war game.